My stepsister slapped my 10-year-old daughter at her birthday party, shouting, "How dare you touch my phone? Now get ready for your next punishment." She had no idea her husband would appear with a shocking announcement that changed everything. My name is Sarah Johnson, and if you asked me a year ago how I pictured my life, I would have told you it was simple, ordinary, and maybe even a little boring. I am 36 years old, I work as a high school teacher here in Chicago, and I am the mother of a 10-year-old girl named Lily. She is the light of my life, the reason I keep moving forward no matter how tired I get, no matter how many bills pile up or how many hours I spend grading papers late into the night. I thought my life was steady. Not perfect, but steady. What I did not know was how quickly everything could be shaken apart by someone who should have been family. I grew up with a complicated family, and a lot of that complication was tied to my stepsister, Rachel Miller. Rachel and I never got along, even as children. She is 3 years younger than me, now 33, and from the day our parents brought us under the same roof, she made sure I knew she was different, separate, and somehow better. Over time, I learned to keep my distance. I built my own life, became a teacher, and raised Lily on my own after her father walked out on us when she was still a baby. Rachel married a man named David Miller, a 40-year-old IT consultant, quiet and polite, the type of man who seemed patient enough to put up with Rachel's temper. Or at least that's what everyone thought. It was supposed to be a happy day when everything changed. Lily had been counting down the days to her birthday party. She had wanted balloons, music, her favorite cake, and most of all, she wanted everyone she loved to be there. I wanted to give her that. I saved money, planned carefully, and decorated the house myself. I strung colorful streamers across the living room, blew up what felt like 100 balloons, and baked trays of little cupcakes on top of ordering her big birthday cake. The neighbors came, some of my colleagues stopped by with gifts, and of course, family showed up too. Rachel and David arrived a little late, and from the moment she walked in, I could sense Rachel's attitude. She gave me a stiff hug, the kind that lasted less than a second, and then sat down in the corner with her phone in her hand. She barely even smiled at Lily. Still, I tried not to let her ruin the day. Lily ran around laughing with her friends, her hair tied up in bright ribbons, her cheeks glowing with excitement. She opened presents, she played music, she danced with her little cousins. Everything seemed fine until Rachel's phone, lying on the sofa, caught Lily's attention. Lily is curious, always exploring, and in that moment she simply picked up the phone to look at it. I was across the room pouring juice for the kids when I heard Rachel's voice. It cut through the noise like a sharp blade. "How dare you touch my phone?" she screamed. I spun around just in time to see her rush forward. Before anyone could stop her, Rachel slapped Lily across the face. My daughter's small body jerked back from the force of it, and then she stood frozen, her eyes wide, tears already forming. Rachel's face twisted in anger as she shouted again, "Now get ready for your next punishment." The room went silent. Music stopped, the children stared, the adults froze. I felt my heart jump into my throat. I ran to Lily, pulled her into my arms, and looked at Rachel with disbelief. My daughter had done nothing, absolutely nothing, that deserved being struck like that. Guests whispered. Some stood up as if unsure whether to step in. I wanted to scream, to demand how she could lay a hand on my child, but the words stuck in my throat. Rachel stood there breathing hard, still glaring at Lily as if a child touching her phone was some unforgivable crime. I knew she had a temper, but this went beyond anything I had ever expected. I turned my back to shield Lily, to comfort her, whispering that she was safe now. What none of us knew at that moment was that Rachel's own husband had been recording the whole thing. David, quiet as always, had been sitting in the corner with his phone out, pretending to scroll or check messages. In reality, he had been filming. He captured the exact moment Rachel lashed out, her slap, her harsh words, and the look of fear on my daughter's face. I didn't realize he had done this until much later, but that single act became the turning point of everything that followed. For the rest of the party, the mood was ruined. The laughter and joy were gone. I tried to keep things together for Lily's sake, tried to cut the cake and sing happy birthday, but I could see the confusion and hurt in her eyes. Guests gave me sympathetic looks. Some of them left early, and Rachel sat back down like nothing had happened, scrolling through her phone again, as if slapping a child was a normal thing to do. I stayed quiet for Lily's sake, but inside I was boiling. I thought about confronting Rachel later, about telling her never to come near my daughter again. But before I had a chance, David stood up. His face was pale, serious in a way I had never seen before. He didn't say much during the party, but there was something in his eyes, something cold, almost calculating. At the time, I didn't know what he was planning. I only knew that the day that was meant to be filled with joy had turned into a nightmare, and I could feel that nothing between us would ever be the same again. After everyone left that night, I sat with Lily in her room until she fell asleep. She was shaken, her cheeks still red from where Rachel's hand had landed, and she clung to me tightly, asking over and over why her aunt had hurt her. I had no good answer. I kissed her forehead and promised her she was safe, even though deep inside, I felt anything but safe. My own stepsister had crossed a line I never thought she would, and I knew something had broken in our family that could never be repaired. When I finally came back into the living room, Rachel was gone. She had left without saying a word to me, and David was standing near the door. He didn't look at me right away, just stared down at his phone with a strange expression on his face. When I asked him quietly why Rachel had left so suddenly, he looked up at me with a calmness that unsettled me. "She'll regret what she did today," he said. His voice wasn't raised, but there was something final in the way he said it. I didn't know then that he meant it literally. The next morning, I woke up to messages on my phone. Friends, neighbors, even colleagues had forwarded me a video that was already spreading online. My heart pounded as I pressed play, and there it was, Rachel screaming at Lily, the slap, the words, "Get ready for your next punishment." Every sound, every movement, every cruel detail captured perfectly. My hands trembled as I held the phone, realizing immediately that David had been the one to record it. Within minutes, I saw comments flooding in beneath the video. People were outraged. They called Rachel a monster, demanded that action be taken, shared it again and again until it spread like fire. I sat frozen on the couch, watching my stepsister's cruelty become a public scandal overnight. Part of me felt sick, but another part of me, if I'm being honest, felt like justice was finally beginning. For years, I had watched Rachel manipulate, criticize, and belittle others, but never had anyone stopped her. Now the world was watching, and there was no way she could escape. That same afternoon, the police came. It happened so quickly I almost couldn't believe it. They knocked on Rachel's door, and within minutes, she was in handcuffs. David had given them the recording, and they treated it as clear evidence of child abuse. I wasn't there, but I later heard from neighbors that Rachel shouted and fought, insisting it was just a misunderstanding, that she had lost her temper. But it didn't matter. The recording spoke louder than any excuse she tried to make. The most shocking part, though, came right after her arrest. David didn't wait. He filed for divorce immediately, declaring that he was done with her. He told the police officers on the spot that he wanted nothing more to do with a woman who could hit a child like that, especially at her own niece's birthday party. I only learned all of this when he showed up at my house later that evening. When I opened the door, he stood there looking tired but determined. He handed me a written apology, not just for me but for Lily as well. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have stopped her long before it came to this. I knew how she was, but I let it go. I can't undo what she did, but I made sure she paid for it." I didn't know how to respond. I thanked him, but my feelings were tangled. On one hand, I hated that the world had seen my daughter's pain, that Lily's face had been shared by strangers online. On the other hand, I couldn't deny that Rachel deserved to face consequences. She had crossed the line, and David's actions made sure she couldn't walk away from it like she had done so many times before with smaller things. Still, part of me wondered why David had acted so swiftly, almost coldly. Filing for divorce on the spot, giving her to the police without hesitation, it wasn't just about protecting Lily, I felt. It was about something deeper. Revenge. For how many years had he suffered Rachel's temper? How many times had she treated him with the same cruelty? Now he had his chance, and he didn't hesitate. That night, After David left, I sat in silence thinking about everything that had happened in such a short time. In less than 24 hours, my daughter's birthday had turned from celebration to nightmare, from humiliation to public outrage, and from outrage to Rachel sitting in a jail cell. My phone kept buzzing with messages, people asking for details, reporters even trying to contact me, but I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to speak. I was still trying to process what it meant. When Lily woke up the next morning, she asked me if Rachel would come back. I told her no, that Rachel wouldn't be allowed near her again. She seemed relieved, but I could see a shadow in her eyes, a kind of fear that no child should have to carry. I hugged her close and promised her that her life would go back to normal, even though I wasn't sure if it ever truly could. Meanwhile, Rachel's name was everywhere. On the news, on social media, in conversations at the grocery store. She wasn't just my stepsister anymore. She was a symbol of cruelty, of betrayal within a family. And David, the quiet husband who had always stood in the background, had turned into the man who exposed her to the world. I should have felt satisfied that justice was done, but a strange unease stayed with me. Because if there was one thing I knew about Rachel, it was that she never accepted defeat quietly. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over yet. In the days that followed Rachel's arrest, life in Chicago felt different. My house became quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that hangs heavy after a storm. I kept sending Lily to school, kept showing up for my classes, tried to cook meals and carry on as if everything was normal, but everywhere I turned, Rachel's shadow followed me. Her name was still in the news, her video replayed on television, her face printed in the papers. I couldn't even buy groceries without overhearing strangers talking about the woman who slapped a child at her own niece's party. Every word reminded me that this was my family, my blood, and now my story was tangled with hers in a way I never wanted. At school, my students whispered about it too. Some of them asked me if it was true, if the little girl in the video was my daughter. I nodded once, and then told them we weren't going to discuss it any further. I held myself together in front of them, but when I came home, I broke down more than once. I hated that Lily had been pulled into such ugliness. I hated that she was the one who had to face not only the slap, but also the weight of so many eyes watching. David visited again a few days later. He looked different now, more confident, more outspoken. He told me the divorce papers had been filed officially and that Rachel wasn't fighting them because she couldn't. He also said she was still in custody, facing charges that could keep her away for months, maybe longer. Then he surprised me by saying, "I won't let her come near you or Lily ever again. I'll make sure of it." His words should have reassured me, but instead, they left me unsettled. There was something too sharp in his tone, as if this wasn't just about protecting us, it was about destroying her completely. Part of me wondered whether Rachel's betrayal of family wasn't only my burden, but his too. He had been humiliated for years by her temper, her constant control, and now he had the chance to turn the tables. Asked him why he uploaded the video for the world to see instead of just taking it to the police privately. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Because people like her deserve to be shamed. The world should know what she is." There was no hesitation in his voice, no guilt, no sign that he questioned his choice. I nodded slowly, but inside, I wasn't sure how I felt. Justice is one thing, but revenge dressed as justice is something else entirely. Meanwhile, Lily was still recovering. She had nightmares some nights, waking up crying, asking me to check the locks on the doors. Once, when I told her we were going to visit my friend across town, she asked in a small voice, "Rachel won't be there, right?" It broke me to hear the fear in her voice, to know that her trust in family had been shaken so deeply. I held her close, whispered that Rachel would never touch her again, and prayed I was telling the truth. Then came the day when I saw Rachel again, though not face to face. It was on the news. She was being walked out of the courthouse in handcuffs, her hair messy, her face pale, her eyes darting around as reporters shouted questions. For the first time in my life, I saw Rachel look powerless. She had always carried herself with an air of superiority, always acted like she was untouchable, but now the world saw her for what she had done. I should have felt satisfied, but what I felt instead was a strange emptiness. She was my stepsister. We shared a childhood, however broken it had been, and watching her fall so publicly left me torn between anger and sorrow. One night, after Lily was asleep, David called me. His voice was steady, almost too steady. He told me that Rachel had begged him to take the video down, that she had cried and sworn it was just a mistake. She thought I would protect her, he said. Then he added quietly, but I didn't. I told her she made her own choices, and now she is to live with them. There was no triumph in his voice, no laughter. Just cold certainty. I asked him what he planned to do next, and he said something that still lingers with me. This isn't just about what she did to Lily. It's about everything. Every insult, every cruel word, every time she thought she could walk over people. She thought she could betray everyone who cared about her. Well, now she knows what betrayal feels like. That was when I realized the full truth. This wasn't only my story of betrayal and revenge. This was David's too. Rachel had betrayed her role as a wife as much as she had betrayed her role as a stepsister and an aunt. And David, quiet and patient David, had chosen to take revenge in a way she could never escape. He hadn't shouted, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't even confronted her directly. He had simply shown the world who she really was and then walked away. But I also knew Rachel, and I knew she wasn't the type to accept defeat easily. Even behind bars, she would be plotting, twisting, finding some way to make herself the victim. That thought haunted me as I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this story was really finished or if it was only beginning. The betrayal cut deep. Rachel had hurt my daughter in front of me, had shattered the one day meant to bring us joy. But the revenge cut just as deep. David had exposed her in such a brutal, public way that it left me uneasy, even though I couldn't deny she deserved consequences. I found myself caught between two truths, relief that Rachel was gone, and fear that the cycle of betrayal and revenge hadn't ended at all. Weeks passed, but the storm around Rachel did not calm. The video remained online, shared again and again, each new wave of attention cutting deeper into her pride. She tried to fight back in small ways, letters from jail claiming she had been set up, messages sent through distant relatives insisting she had been misunderstood, but no one believed her anymore. The world had seen her with their own eyes. Her betrayal was undeniable. For me and Lily, life slowly began to stitch itself back together, though the wound was still raw. I poured myself into my work, into routines, into creating an environment where my daughter could laugh again. She began smiling more, sleeping better, but her innocence had been marked by fear that didn't belong in a child's heart. Sometimes I would catch her staring off, quiet, as if replaying that moment in her mind, and I knew it would stay with her longer than I wished. David, meanwhile, became a presence in our lives more often than before. He checked in, asked about Lily, sometimes brought small gifts or food, gestures that felt thoughtful but also heavy with unspoken meaning. One evening he said plainly, "I did what needed to be done. You and Lily deserve peace." I thanked him, but in my heart, I wondered whether he sought peace for us or vengeance for himself. Perhaps it was both. Then came the hearing where Rachel stood before the judge. I was not required to be there, but I went anyway. I wanted to look her in the eye one last time, to see the woman who had turned my daughter's joy into pain. She looked thinner, older, her arrogance drained but not gone. When her gaze swept the room and landed on me, she narrowed her eyes, as if to blame me for her downfall. I didn't flinch. I just held Lily's small hand tighter, silently promising my daughter that I would always protect her. The judge did not hesitate. With the video as evidence and David's testimony, Rachel was sentenced. She would not walk free for a long while. When the gavel struck, it echoed in my chest like the final crack of a whip. Justice had been sealed. Yet as I left the courtroom, I could not shake the feeling that victory had a bitter taste. Because this was not a story of triumph. It was a story of betrayal, sharp and merciless, and of revenge that had no softness in it. Rachel betrayed her role as a sister, as an aunt, as a human being who should have known compassion. And David's revenge, though swift and public, was a blade that cut through everything: her freedom, her marriage, her dignity. That night, I sat alone after Lily went to bed and let the silence surround me. I thought about Rachel, sitting in her cell, perhaps replaying the moment she lifted her hand against my daughter. I thought about David, finally free of her but hardened by what he had done. And I thought about myself, carrying the weight of it all, trying to rebuild a normal life for Lily, while knowing that some scars never fade. One question lingered in my mind. Did Rachel deserve the punishment she received? Yes, without question. But did David's way of ensuring it cross into something darker? Also yes, because he could have protected us quietly, privately, without turning her into a spectacle. Instead, he chose to expose her, to humiliate her before the world. And maybe that was his betrayal too, not against us, but against the very idea of mercy. The turning point of everything was that secret recording. None of this would have happened without it. Rachel thought she had control when she raised her hand, but in truth, she lost everything in that single moment. David's phone became the weapon she never saw coming, and once the world saw her cruelty, there was no undoing it. Now, when I look back, I know my life will never be the same. Lily's birthday will always be remembered not for balloons and cake, but for the moment betrayal ripped through my home. Rachel is gone, David is free, and I am left holding the pieces. Family is supposed to protect you, to stand beside you in moments of joy. But my family betrayed me from the inside, and the revenge that followed, well, just left its own shadow. As I close this chapter of my life, I know the story is not one I would ever have chosen, but it is mine. And though Rachel may try to twist it in her mind, though David may believe his revenge was the only path, I hold the truth. The truth that a child's laughter was stolen, a family's bond was shattered, and a cycle of betrayal and revenge left scars that will last forever.